All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard, Vernon, and Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Man, y'all's comments are absolutely entertaining. That's why I love this time of the year, because now when I do my analysis during the recruiting season, I don't get all this. You know what I'm saying? All this back, but I'll do a video talking about that later on. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Easily one of the more interesting rivalries in college football is the Auburn versus LSU rivalry. And I'll say that because, Auburn versus LSU kind of sort of wasn't a thing in the late 90s. But it began to gain some traction as Auburn started to get those 6 straight wins over Alabama. Auburn was going back and forth. It became a rivalry because Auburn would win one, LSU would win one. Auburn would win one, LSU would win one. But then when you start talking about the latter portion of the Tommy Tuberville era, that's when things started to taper off to where you have what we have now. LSU winning 3 straight, then Auburn winning 1. LSU winning 3 straight, then Auburn winning 1. So that's where we are at the point, and that's why the Auburn fan base are kind of aggravated by this particular series. Now, coming into this game, Auburn really can take advantage of the fact that LSU has lost a plethora of talent on the offensive side of the football field. Clyde Edwards-Helaire gone. Joe Burrow gone. Jamar Chase gone. Justin Jefferson gone. The only guy that's left from that whole situation is Terrence Marshall. And Terrence Marshall is actually doing pretty good. Getting off to a great start, got about 500 yards receiving. They're using him in that bunch formation to where they put him in the interior portion of that to create some mismatches with the middle linebacker and the Sam linebacker, whoever is involved. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Auburn takes advantage of this. Now, I will say this, Auburn is in a situation to where they have 3 pretty serviceable running backs. One more serviceable than others, and that's Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby is a uncharacteristic, take you back to Mike Dyer back in the 2010-2011 for Auburn Tigers, is a serviceable running back to where he can touch the ball 30 times. And if my memory serves me correctly, this is probably where Auburn is going to go in this game. I really think that Auburn has to establish the running game. They have to establish the line of scrimmage, which crazy enough, they've done a pretty good job of running the football. Now, with Brandon Council, the transfer who recently got hurt, you're probably going to have to go with Keandre Jones, who was a 4-star recruit out of Hogansville, Georgia, as an offensive lineman. That's where you got to go with this. But Auburn might be on to something, unlike what a lot of the Auburn fan base thinks. I think this team is progressing on a pretty decent level. Now, if you look at Auburn historically, this is the time where Auburn usually starts to hit that stride, starts to figure out where they are identity-wise as an offense. So, let me take you back to 2013. Auburn plays LSU in Baton Rouge, loses that game 35-21, but in the second half, they started to find something that worked. They started to find the run-pass option with Nick Marshall and Trey Mason. They started to find something that made sense, that gave them some optimism going forward. Then they go down to College Station and face a Texas A&M team. Everybody was like, all right, so what we got here? What do we got here? Is it about to be another blowout? Texas A&M came to Auburn in 2012, and probably gave Auburn one of the best ass whoopings that Auburn has ever took at home. 63-21. Johnny Football going on his Heisman campaign at Auburn. And everybody was like, man, what's going to happen? But what happened was Auburn went down to College Station. They played a complete football game. They played a game to where they faced some adversity. They got down quick, but they continued to fight. And that's the thing about the Gus Malzahn football team. No, I'm absolutely not sunshine pumping Gus Malzahn, because he has a lot of flaws that he needs to fix long term if he wants to be a long-term tenured coach in college football. But at the same time, it started the culture of the not give up phase of Auburn football, getting down against a very talented team and continued to fight. And I think about the fact that Gus Malzahn's team, they don't panic. When they get down, they don't panic. So going into this game against LSU, here's what I got. I think LSU is a very talented football team. They definitely don't have what they normally have, especially at the defensive line. They're going to rely heavily on coverage to allow them to have pressure on the quarterback. And this is a game where Bo Nix especially is going to have to respond and have to be that leader and have to be that presidential guy at that quarterback position to give Auburn a chance to have an amicable chance to win this football game. Because, one, you got three really good running backs. You got DJ Williams, you got Sean Shivers, you have Tank Bigsby, who can actually help you create some balance. LSU's defense is, I think they're very athletic. I think the secondary is the strong point of this defense. And they're going to rely really heavily on that to place some pressure on Bo Nix. Bo Nix has to go back to the quick strikes. I think those intermediate passing routes are going to be open in this particular game. So that's what we're looking at. So when we look at LSU on defense, definitely talented. Easily one of the more talented as far as recruiting wise defenses in college football. So who are some of the big guys here? Number one, you got to look at Jacoby Stevens, who has 29 total tackles. Damon Clark, Jabril Cox. All of those guys have combined for about 60 tackles solo. And one thing that's different about LSU's defense is that they're not as opportunistic as they have been in the past. Only 4 takeaways for this particular defense as far as interceptions go. And then you talk about the fumble recovery, about 4 there as well. So here's what Auburn definitely has to do. They have to protect the football. I think Bo Nix has to command this defense to where they're in a situation where they protect the football. They're at home. You start to target some of your best guys. Who are your best guys? Well, Seth Williams is a really good guy to throw the ball to. I mean, he can make some things happen. Seth Williams. Xavion Capers out of Alpharetta, Georgia, who is starting to emerge as a factor in this Auburn offense. And I also like the fact that Auburn has J.J. Peggs, who, this guy is like a offensive lineman, a fullback, H-back, all in one. So you really got to look at those things. So Auburn is in a good position to where they could possibly get that win against LSU that they need to move forward, because a lot of the fan base are like, look, we want to beat LSU. We want to beat Georgia every year. We want to beat Alabama every year. Now is the time, Gus. Make it happen. Throw out the playbook and get it done. All right. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast Talking Auburn Football. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.